Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/ask Reddit by Planet Reddit. What were the sexual education disaster stories from your school? When we were in 8th grade we had the sex ed teacher come in and talk to us. She showed a picture of a normal N, like one of those see-through pictures that explained each part. Well, in that it showed the balls. The teacher explained what they do and why you need them to impregnate a woman. She asked if there is any questions. Suddenly my friend Alex raises his hand and asks, let's say that a boy only has one ball. Could I still have kids? And that's how we all found out Alex only had one ball. Poor fucking Alex. Did he at least get his answer? Turns out you can have a kid with one ball, so he's fine, lol. Doesn't it depend on the ball? The teacher set a dildo directly on the desk of the girl in front of me, and she bursted out crying and left the room. I believe that's called PTSD. Yeah, it was really sad. Was there more to why she left? The separated boys and girls. The teacher for the boys let us do open Q&A anonymously on index cards we put in a box, and he would answer them out loud. He spent most of the time going through them in front of everyone going, not gonna read that one. Not gonna read that one. You come on guys. If woman has starch masks on body, does that mean she has been partnered before? Am I pregnant? Can you get pregnant? Not exactly sex ed because I had to go to a Catholic school, but all of us boys got banned less than 5 minutes into our puberty talk because 2 kids joked about a poorly drawn diagram of a N. We were told we were gonna have a presentation at a later date. Never did. Well, no, I think they were just looking for an excuse. I don't know what they expected. Yet it wasn't even the teacher or someone directly affiliated with the school who called it off. The guest speaker just couldn't deal with a couple 11-year-olds snickering at a couple of oddly bushy balls. But like, what did they expect? Somebody asked how 2 women can have sex. The 60-year-old female health teacher told us that VL fisting is the standard method, complete with a demonstration for how to perform fisting. I have never once fisted a V. I must be doing lesbian sex incorrectly. Someone link me better examples. Becky, come over here. We've been doing all of this wrong. My grandma is married to a woman named Becky, so I lolled extra hard. The only sex education that we got in my school was a 2-week course during our biology class. I lived in a pretty conservative part of Texas growing up, so our sex education was basically just about abstinence and a few of the really gross STD pictures. Our biology professor showed us a live birth every year. The worst part is that it was a video of her giving birth to her son. I never want to think about my teachers who her especially while giving birth. My husband teaches high school. They get age appropriate and comprehensive sex ed from around 2nd grade on. It's state mandated. Gladly, because I'm sure my super conservative county wouldn't allow it. So, sex ed doesn't hold stigma in the presentation. Here's the curriculum. Here is why it's the curriculum. Teach it. However, if any of the teachers showed their own birth video in class, they'd probably be asked to resign. Show a birth video, by all means, but keep it professional and educational. Making an example of your own bits is super duper unethical. Yeah, something about it is just weird, and even if I had to resort to my own birth video, I feel like I would edit it so you don't know it's me and never own up to it. But even that is still super weird. Hella uncomfortable. This just makes me think of that South Park episode where they're teaching sex positions to 6-year-olds, lol. This was in the late 90s in public middle school. The school held an assembly and brought in a group of these weird bodybuilders talking about sex and God. One of them tried and failed to rip a phone book in half. I don't remember much about it except they took a volleyball net and stretched it out so the holes got really big and said something to the effect of, "This is a condom." Imagine how easy it would be to throw a volleyball through that net. Not hard, right? Well, condoms are made to protect sperm from passing through, but the AIDS virus is much smaller than sperm, and just like a volleyball through this stretch out net, it can get through much easier. Edit. I'm shocked this was such a popular trend, or maybe even the same group power team. I just remember being appalled at the religious, abstinence only and anti-science messages. If my children came home and told me about this, I would throw a fit. I don't blame you. Sex education in the States is abhorrent. I remember how the teachers when I was in school took themselves way too seriously. Sure, but every state and county differs. My experience in the States was many times better than the stories here. We also had it 5th through 8th grade. Catholic school was a trip. In 9th grade, they separated all the guys and girls in our year for sex ed. The guys got your typical Catholic school-esque sex talk about abstinence and going blind if you masturbate, while us girls got to go grocery shopping and bake cookies for the boys. We never did get a sex talk, and the next year, 4 girls got pregnant. I'm sorry, what? How did that decision get made? Today we'll teach the boys to be ashamed of their DS, and we'll have the girls make them bake treats so they feel a little less bad about it. What will we teach the girls? We won't. What will we teach the girls? We won't. I'm dead, knowing who ran my school. That's 100% how that went down. Baking cookies for the boys would give them ideas. A kid asked what popping a cherry was, and the teacher, who was a big burly idiot of a guy, bluntly said when women lose their virginity, they bleed all over the bed, and cherries are red. Absolutely mortified expressions washed over the face of every girl in the class, and I vaguely remember one girl saying not happening. Apparently some of them complained to their parents, and the next day he had to clarify, but with the most sarcastic only some of them do explanation. My mom was on the PTA at the time. Said some of the parents lost their shit. Another time, one kid asked why his balls hurt when he squeezed them, and he said because you're squeezing them. Don't do that. Well, he wasn't wrong with that last part, unless I am also missing some critical info. At my school the teacher talked about anal sex to preserve virginity, and anal stimulation in men. Now I realize she was really open to a lot. As if God, the almighty, all-knowing, all-powerful creator of everything, looks down to see Debbie taking her umpteenth coke behind and thinks, drat, another one who outsmarted me. Do these people really believe it works like that? I often wonder. Meaning, do they really think they can trick God with a loophole like that? Do they believe it's not sex if you get naked with a guy and suck cock for all it's worth and then let him come in your behind and therefore you're still pure? Really? I suspect God cares more about how pure our treatment of other people is than how often we let people come in our behinds. Edit. Thank you stranger for my very first medal. This pretty much sums up what is left of my religious beliefs after escaping a fanatically Christian upbringing. Very young female health teacher with long fake nails extremely flustered while demonstrating putting a condom on something D-shaped from the sculpture studio, Arts High School. After a few tries with us laughing she goes, come on, you all know how to do this. Pregnant girl pipes up, miss. I clearly do not. That's a girl with wit and humility. During the prom drunk driven assembly, the district superintendent pulled a volunteer from the audience. It was my friend Tom. The superintendent asked Tom, what do you want to do with your life? Tom, having just knocked up his freshman girlfriend, exclaimed, I'm gonna be a dad. The whole auditorium erupted. Audibly laughed at that one. Have an upvote. I remember in year 10 some people came to our school for sex ed. They put the boys in a separate classroom and then talked about how to use feminine hygiene products for an hour. To a room of 15-16-year-old girls. I later learned from my friends that to the boys they talked about nocturnal emissions. Great job. Whichever organization that was. Talk about shutting the stable door after the horse has bolted. Never heard this one before but I like it. We got that. But it was year 5. We were all 10. And even then there was already a girl who'd gotten her period. The sex ed teacher had a bag full of goodies as she put it. I pulled out a dildo and some kid said OMG what is that, I swear I've seen one of those in my house. That's so weird. TF did she want you to do with it? Class, does this smell weird to you? We pretty much learned that the balls get hairy. That's all. All there really is to sex. My middle school sex ed teacher held both hands out away from his body, palms turned up, and said I like to play with my wife's jitties. And that's how you get a woman pregnant. Pregnant? Once in 7th grade a girl asked if you could get pregnant by a screwdriver. I think about that girl a lot. Well, can you? I found a rusty toolkit in my basement and I don't think I can afford child support. The teacher was just like hysterically laughing and one girl goes, yeah, if there's sperm on it, So the conclusion is don't come on a screwdriver and put it inside a lady. Guys are fine though. We were about 15-16 yo and our tutor, that weird chemistry teacher with jokes that aren't funny, came in the morning to our class, gave out condoms, started telling all about it, and then he opens a briefcase and puts a dildo on a front desk. The guy who was sitting there, Ukrainian and slightly homophobic, literally flew away to the back of the classroom on his chair. That's kinda hilarious and also tragic as hell. Wait, the teacher brought in a dildo? Why? I've heard of teachers bringing in bananas and cucumbers to use as demos, but this teacher seemed to have cum prepped. They simply decided to stop teaching sex ed my year. No explanation. Once we even asked the health teacher, hey, are we ever going get sex ed? And she goes, do you guys really want to learn your VS and all that? Yes, we did. On a totally unrelated note, we had 6 student pregnancies in my last couple years of high school, and almost 10 more before the kids in my class turned 20. Wild how that happens. What a terrible teacher. One guy in my class kept fainting when he saw any private parts, so because of him we didn't get sex ed. Dumbest theory, man was missing half his blood, so he kept getting a boner and then passing out from lack of O2 to the brain. I knew a guy that was literally afraid of how a V looked. He swore he was straight and liked girls and loved OS, but bro would full on toss his cookies if you even talked about a V. Several of us took great delight in tearing pages from our skin mags and tucking them into his locker. I hope you have come to terms with yourself, Carlos, and have found happiness in the chicks with DS subreddits. We weren't allowed to have sex ed because the school is in Texas. You couldn't swing a backpack without hitting a pregnant girl. One of the girls I graduated with was pregnant with baby number 2 at graduation. Dude, same. But I live in Massachusetts. How do schools get away with this? Evangelism. We need to make separation of church and state a thing for realsies. Oh man. America is weird. I go to an Protestant school in Germany and had sex ed in 4th, 6th and 8th grade. We even talked about LGBT people and none of the parents complained. In 10th grade our health teacher asked for volunteers to demonstrate putting a condom onto a banana. Weirdly, she asked one student to put the condom onto the banana and another kid to awkwardly stand there holding the banana erect. The 2 guys who volunteered were best friends. One of them was very popular and the other one was a bit of hanger-on. People used to speculate that he had a thing for his popular best friend, although that was probably just teenagers being gossips. When the 2 of them stood up to do the demo, people whispered to each other and laughed a little bit, probably because of this rumor. The popular kid was the one holding the banana erection and the hanger-on was the one demoing the condom. When the chuckles started, the popular kid began to blush, which of course made the whole experience feel more intimate. Suddenly it's a classroom of 10th graders watching a maybe besotted hanger-on intimately handle his best friend's banana. As the hanger-on began rolling the condom down the tip of the banana, the popular kid, grimacing with embarrassment, squeezed the base of the banana a little too hard, and the banana burst. The peel split on the sides of the banana. The mushy fruit spurted out. The banana had prematurely ejaculated. And, you got us invested. Did he have a thing for his best friend? Did his best friend reciprocate the feelings? When are they getting married and what should I send them? We need to know. Please consider becoming a writer with word choice skills like that. You painted the perfect description of what happened that it almost sounds fake. But I just have to believe that it's real. You are amazing. Join our community Discord, link in description. Secondary school. We had a visitor come in and talk to us about sexual health. We were crammed in a pretty small room. Chairs in neat rows. Things were fine. Fairly light-hearted and educational. Right up until the STD slideshow starts. She pulls up a picture of severe genital warts and the guy behind me immediately projectile vomits chocolate milk all over himself and his row. I have emetophobia, so everything was kind of a blur after that. But I have vague memories of about 30 teenagers trying to book it out the room at the same time. And this guy was just sitting there covered in chocolate milk puke. A puddle of it around his feet looking like he was contemplating drowning himself in it. Felt kinda bad for him. But it didn't stop me bringing it up every time I bumped into the guy for the next 10 years till I moved. Good lord, I am so sorry. Yeah, but I bet that dude always wears a condom now. I just find it wrong that the girls and the boys were separated. The boys were taught how to put on a condom. The girls were taught how to prevent rape. Yuck. If only people realize that men can be raped too. Yep. And that rape prevention should be about teaching both genders about not raping people, rather than teaching one gender about how to not be raped. Boys and girls were paired to put condoms on bananas, one at a time. Fun times discovering who was proficient and who less so. Immediate chaos as some of the girls turn out to be quite talented at it. I was trying to put the condom inside out on the banana. It wasn't working, and my partner puts her hands on mine and helps me fix it. I remained seated after class was dismissed. I was at an all-girls Catholic school, and the scheduled time for sex ed, mostly puberty info, was during bio. Our teacher was a really young guy who was super sweet but also painfully awkward. He'd just sit at his desk while the female nurse came in to give us the talk. Well, the nurse was kind of old and she didn't realize that she was using a Sharpie to draw on the whiteboard instead of a marker. Long story short, there was a giant diagram of a V drawn in red on his whiteboard for months. His face when he realized it belonged on the watching people die inside subreddit. Isopropyl alcohol will remove Sharpie sick. Hahaha yeah, we figured that out eventually, but it took a little while lol. My school brought in Pam Stenzel. John Oliver did a bit about her once. She told all the girls in the audience that they are like a piece of tape and that the more time the tape was used, they had sex, the tape would lose its stickiness. They would no longer be attractive to men. Basically said women who have sex outside of marriage are worthless. The crazier thing is this seemed normal at the time. God, what a terrible to teach young girls. I hate it when people use that mentality. It's disgusting people still think that way. The V is way more resilient than people give it credit for. Science teacher here. We teach reproduction and puberty to 11-year-olds. I always do an anonymous question box every lesson so kids can ask every random question under the sun. All kids end up out of their seats putting books away, spare paper and questions in the box so no one notices who put questions in the box. Most baffling question. What happens if a lady is pregnant and has a piercing down there? How does the baby get out? And how did you answer? I ask because I always see sex ed on TV shown as the students always shocked and disgusted as the teachers do this perfect rundown of a lesson. When I had sex ed, our teachers were very uncomfortable and vague with everything and just ended up skipping the entire thing altogether. We were at our hormonal prime, so might have been nice to know a thing or two. It sucks that there are still so many places and people that are against proper sex ed. In my school we had half a school year talking about sex ed in the health class in year 8 and then another half year in year 10. My first encounter was in elementary school, 6th grade, I believe. They separated us by gender and gave us the talk. The instructor was talking about genital hygiene at one point. I was genuinely confused when I learned some folks still have that extra bit of skin on their DS and need to take extra care to wash up. I went home and for the life of me couldn't figure out what I was missing. Later on, O taught me what an uncircumcised D is. Grew up Mormon. Dad says one is a lock, the other is a key. Mum says sex is sacred. Any other info was beyond enlightening. Our biology teacher said if someone says that the condom broke they are lying and proceeded to grab the condom in both hands and stretch it till it was like 6 foot long. I mean, it's a good demonstration, but I can tell you from experience they do break occasionally, so don't rely on them as being 100% effective. Also, my eldest is a good kid, wouldn't want it any other way. The sex ed person at my school stretched a condom over his head and said something like, if he says he's too big for a condom, you run. That's actually extremely bad advice because even though a condom technically can stretch that far, its structural integrity will be compromised when stretched past its size limit, making it far more likely to break during use. That condom your teacher used already had micro tears that would have made it practically useless. You couldn't see them but they were there. If a guy says the condom is too small, listen to him and get the right size. If he's just flattering himself, he'll try to stop you. If he really is just trying to be responsible and safe, he'll agree. My teacher for sex ed was super old. telling us all the classical stuff. Then we had our PE teacher tell us it's exactly like a barbecue. How is sex like a BBQ? Edit. I regret asking. Go to season the meat before you put it in the grill. Get it all juicy so it doesn't stick and breaks the skin. That's the worst thing I've ever heard, but it's more than I was ever taught. At the end of the class, a teacher wanted the class to play a sperm race game on the smart board to explain the parts as we were seeing them. One of the more popular boys, who had in the previous trimester gotten a popular girl pregnant, volunteered to play in front of the class. He was the first one to make it to the end of the game and won. Then put his fist in the air and said, "It's not the first time I've won this game." Everyone erupted into laughter. Iconic. We had 2 people come from a local community college who had the brain dead idea to put on a play about STDs and rape in front of a bunch of 11-year-olds. When they were finished, they said, "Okay, any questions?" And the kid next to me raised his hand and asked if he could use a balloon as a condom. Those 2 college kids never came back to our school again. The teacher forgot to put sound on for a birthing video, so he rewinded it. Watched a doctor shove a baby back into a woman's V by the head. I was born 9 times that day. To all the people in this thread saying they never got sex ed, don't be afraid to ask anything on r/too afraid to ask or r/no stupid questions. We'll be happy to answer your questions about sex, protection, STDs and pregnancy with honesty and without making fun of you. In 5th grade, we were given a pamphlet that covered basic sex ed topics that we were supposed to take home to our parents. A friend of mine got really offended at it and vowed to throw it in the trash. He had never come across as an uptight fundamentalist type, and I'm not sure what had made him so angry. Not a disaster, but my health teacher said, "Boys, wrap it up. Girls, keep your knees shut." We went to a performing arts school. In hindsight, it sounds like she was just encouraging the guys to all participate in gay sex. Ironically, keeping your knees shut can really increase the feeling of friction. First day of class, the teacher asks the first row of students, "Do you have an anus?" They were all pretty surprised and all of them answered no. The teacher was very proud of himself. He would also tell the young boys to play with their DS instead of playing with the faucets we had on our tables. A real charmer. Edit. A lot of missing S for the plurals. Boarding school in Denmark brought in an outside sexologist, still dubious on the qualifications. She spent most of the time talking about how great sex was interspersed with brief, sudden clips of straight up O. She ended the talk by explaining that the use of condoms is strictly optional, as long as you get checked for STDs once or twice a month. Our science teacher pulled her aside afterwards, and subsequently gave us the angriest sex ed lesson ever taught on planet Earth. Needless to say, she was not invited back. 10th grade, Catholic school. The health teacher added instruction on how to give a good blowjob. In a Catholic school, I didn't think that was possible. It was a priest. So sex ed was taught by a woman named Ms. Payne. It was a pretty standard lesson, minus her drawing the menstrual cycle in Sharpie on the whiteboard. The absolute horror, though, was finding out that she ran in the same social circle as my dad at a Super Bowl party. For years, my dad threatened my sister and I with dating her if we didn't behave. Your dad sounds like a fun guy. I went to a public high school in Texas during the late 90s, along with teaching the basic nuts and bolts biology behind reproduction. Every effort was made to push us toward abstinence until marriage. We got all the horror stories of the awful things that STDs would do to you if you caught one. And while contraceptives were covered, there was a strong emphasis on their failure rate. But 2 things about our sex ed still stand out to me today. They took all the students into the auditorium. There, they gave us a slideshow presentation featuring a convoluted chart which tried to convince us that, if everyone had just 2 sex partners in their life, we were all guaranteed to get an STD. They also told us all that, while it might be a double standard, the reality was that men can have as much sex as they want without any social repercussions. It's even worth bragging about. But any woman who is not a virgin will be perceived as used, and no good man will want to marry her, and that having sex with a man before marriage will damage your relationship with him, and he will no longer see you as worth marrying. So if you're not a virgin, ladies, You're a disgusting E who has no value as a partner, and you probably have chlamydia and won't know it until you try to have a baby and discover it's destroyed your fertility. And naturally, not a single word was ever breathed about anything LGBT. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.